Hey, good morning everyone. Today I'm on my way to the London gaming market. I can't believe it's finally happening. I'm so excited. I've got this camera here attached to my bag, so hopefully I can get some really good footage. Let's go and see what it's like. So I'm just having a quick stop off to grab some breakfast before I get there. What they're doing this time is they've actually limited the amount of tickets you can get for early entry. So I think there's only 300 people that are able to go in at once. So I'm going to finish eating this and then let's go and find out. So I was really curious to see what would be different considering this was the first event since COVID. The first thing you had to do was scan one of the NHS barcodes and then put on this wristband here, go to the sanitising station, and then finally you could enter the market. As you can see, it was a lot more spacious than it was the last time I went. If you compare this scene here to how it looked in 2019, it was almost like a completely different event. But that's not to say it was a bad thing. I actually enjoyed having the extra space. The hotel actually opened up an extra room, so there was 3 different rooms to walk around this time, and the tables were all evenly spaced out between the 3 rooms. Unfortunately though, as you can see with the footage, the 360 camera that I hoped would get a really good tour of the event doesn't quite look as good as the Osmo Pocket that I used in my last one. So rather than doing a full tour and talking through everything that you can see on the shelves, in this video instead I'm going to do a quick overview so you can kind of get a feel as to what the event was like, and then I'm going to go and show you my pickups that I got. Before we start looking at all the tables though, I just have to tell you about this week's sponsor, Bifrost Bridge Studios. They're currently working on a new graphic novel trilogy called Jedi Brothers, and they've sent me over a few preview images, so see what you think of these, and if you like what you see, go and support them over on Twitter and Patreon. And now let's take a look at the next stall. So starting off in this room here, we had these amazing modded Game Boys here, and some modded Game Gears, and even Atari Lynxes at the back there. And there was a few other modded systems too. They were quite expensive, but they did have all of the fancy extras that you would want if you were to buy one of those. I was really tempted actually to get the Game Gear, but you'll see later on why I ran out of money, so I couldn't actually go back and get one at this show, but maybe if they're there next time, because I would really love a Game Gear with a proper backlight. And unfortunately that bit there went really blurry, but that was another stall that had some really good consoles for sale and a whole load of PS2 games that you can see there. It was quite busy still, even though there was only 300 people in, and I do a second loop round at the end, so it does get a bit clearer later on. But it just felt so good to be back and able to root through all of the games again, just like I loved to do in the past. Here's a bunch of SNES games. I think I actually picked one up from in there. There was also loads of Sega Saturn, N64, and underneath that box there as well they had a load of Famicom games. I just loved flicking through them, and you can kind of see at the back there some of the rarer boxed consoles that they had as well. It's always really cool to see stuff like that. There's an Atari 5200 up there. I would love to get one of them one day. And here's me moving over a little bit further. You can see there's some Master System games, there's some Sega Saturn games, both Japanese and PAL games there as well. Let me know if you spot anything interesting that catches your eye, even though the quality isn't quite as good as it was during the last tour, but hopefully you can still make out some of the games. This was a really good stall as well. They had a load of N64 games in the boxes there. I just noticed that someone's just bought East Origin for the PC, and I'm kind of jealous of that, because if I saw that before him I would have picked that up. Here's some PS1 games and a load of PS2 games going all the way down there. I think this was the stall that I showed a bit earlier in the video. And of course on this table I made my way straight to the Game Boy games in that box there. Unfortunately I think I had all of those already. And here's me taking a look at some of the Game Gear games, and I did pick a few of these up. Game Gear is something that I want to try and get into more in the future, so I got quite a few Game Gear games from this event actually. This next stall here was run by a friend of mine over on Twitter called William, and my sister had actually made him a personal case for his Game & Watch system. He was so happy to show it off, and my sister was so happy to see that it was actually being used. So that was really nice to meet him, and it's great to meet people that recognise me from YouTube as well. It's always so humbling to know that people enjoy watching my videos, and someone actually came up to me this time and said that they found out about the London gaming market thanks to my tour videos in the past, and that was just mind-blowing. I really loved that interaction. And this stall here was run by another friend of mine over on Twitter, Paul Murphy. He actually makes these Ninty Fresh magazines as well as the Switch Player magazines, and my girlfriend on Twitter as Risuchu has actually drawn the front covers for several of his magazines, so it was really cool to meet him as well. And the whole back of this room was taken up by these amazing posters here and some arcade flyers as well. When I get my new game room, maybe if I go back there in November I'll pick some of those up to go on there. And this was an interesting stall on the other side. This one was a load of old PC games, which you don't really see that many of anymore. And here was some 3D printed logos for different gaming systems. I picked one of those up last time. They're actually fridge magnets as well, so I've got the Game Boy Color one on my fridge in the other room. Of course, here I went straight back to the Game Boy games. This was actually a really cool stall. They also had a load of really quite rare and expensive Switch games. You can actually see some from Limited Run up there as well. Another thing that caught my eye on this stall, and something that you'll see a bit later on when I do my pickups from this episode, is the fact that they had a lot of American SNES games there as well, including some really rare RPGs, so I can't wait to show those off later in this video. Let me know if you spotted anything interesting on this stall. I think it was probably one of the most interesting ones in the whole event, to be honest. This was another good one here. This one had a lot of Japanese stuff on the table there. You can see they've got the 3 Project Diva games there for the PSP and the PlayStation Vita one as well, and some really interesting PS3, some Japanese Game Boy games there. Really cool stall overall, and you'll be seeing something from that stall during my pickups at the end as well. And next to that was another stall full of import games as well, loads of great Super Famicom games there, as well as a few different systems and even a few in the box at the top as well. There wasn't really that much interesting on this one. There was a few different boxes there with different sets of systems in, as you can see. There's a few boxed N64 games, but nothing that really stood out on that one. And it was kind of the same with this one, nothing really jumped out at me. This one here was pretty cool. They had a lot of systems at the back there, as you can see. I always enjoy looking at all of the boxed systems and see if I recognise any of the covers. There was some Sega Saturn games there that I just had a look at, and a few more boxes full of games. It was quite busy to get to that one, so I don't think I actually managed to go back and have a look through all of those. Now, this was a really interesting one. It seemed like just junk that people had thrown into these boxes, but there was a few interesting looking things there, but as you can see, it wasn't really presented that well compared to some of the other stalls. Now, this one was a really good one. I think I pan up in a second. Yeah, there we go. So on the back here, they had some really rare games on this shelf. I managed to take a photo of it because I know the camera's not that good quality, so feel free to rewind and pause the video there and have a look at what was on display. I also really loved flicking through all of the games on this stall. I love how they presented the games and managed to fit more on by actually standing up the SNES cartridges like this, so you could kind of see them without having to look through them all. So I thought that was a really good way of doing it. I'd like to see more stalls try and do something similar to that in the future. As you can see there, I picked up a few games from that one. I can't quite see what they are yet, but stay tuned and you'll find out in just a minute. This was a really good one as well. You can see they had some boxed original Game Boy games at the back there. I kind of regret not picking any of those up because I do really enjoy collecting for the Game Boy, and it would be great to have some more complete in-box games for the collection. Of course, I'm looking through some more Game Boy games there. It's kind of difficult to see the front covers, but maybe you can pick out something interesting. There was also Time Crisis there as well, which is a great arcade shoot-'em-up game. And here's another really good stall. I love it when they have games displayed at the back because I know they're going to be really interesting ones, so I always stand and have a look back there. And there's me picking up another game, that time for the PlayStation 2, and I'll tell you now that was one of the games from the Atelier series, and you'll be able to see which one it was a bit later on in this video. And here's an interesting stall. This one was actually a tombola, like a raffle thing, where you'd get a ticket and you'd have to open it up and see whether it had a prize or not. Unfortunately, I wasn't a winner. And of course, let's end this off now with another flick through some Game Boy games. So I hope you enjoyed that tour of the event. It was quite different to the other years. If you actually want to see what the other years looked like, you can look back on my channel and see all of those. But now let me show you all of the amazing games that I picked up from this latest London gaming market. So the first game I've got here is Super Tetris 3, which is actually the last of the Japanese Tetris games that I needed for the Super Famicom, so I'm really happy to have this one. There's the cartridge for it, and this game is really interesting because it's not just got the classic Tetris mode, it's actually got a few other really unique separate modes on here as well. There's a really cool one where you have to create lightning using different blocks. I've actually uploaded a gameplay video over on my gameplay channel, so if you want to see more gameplay from this version of Tetris, you can go and check that out. I think it's about an hour long, the footage is. I really enjoyed playing it to capture footage for this video. Now, another SNES game I've got here. This one is an American SNES game. I was really excited to see this one because I've seen screenshots from this game before and I always thought it looked really interesting. This is Paladin's Quest, also known as Lenus, I believe, in Japan. Now, this game's interesting because it has a very pastel colour palette, which is kind of uncommon for SNES games. The game itself is fairly straightforward and a fairly simple RPG experience. I hear the sequel, I think that only came out in Japan, improved on quite a lot from this one, but very happy to have it as part of my collection anyway, just because it's one that I've always thought looked really interesting. And another RPG for the SNES that I've got here from the same store. This one is called The Seventh Saga, and this was another game that was published by Enix. This one, I'm not too sure what to think about the game yet. The reason I got this one is because I remember reading a few years ago that there's also two other games, also made by a similar set of people and also published by Enix, that all use the same sort of sprites, but they don't quite use the same sprites. They actually just used a sprite template or something, which I thought was really fascinating and a really interesting insight into how these games were made back in the day. So this one's called Seventh Saga, and I didn't really enjoy it from what I've played so far, but let me know down in the comments below if you've ever played this game before and what you think of it and whether I should go back and play it some more. Now, I've got a few more SNES games to show you before I get onto some other different systems. This one is Mickey Mania, and I remembered playing this one back in the day when I was a kid. This was one of those games that I would rent from Blockbuster over and over again, so I'm very happy to finally have my own copy of the game. I don't know why it's taken this long for me to actually get my own copy, but I'm very glad that I do have it, and when I was playing it to capture footage from this video, the memories from back then just came flooding back, and I really enjoyed my time with it. It's a really good game, and I got it for £8. There's a few little scratches down the side, but nothing that can't be cleaned up, so really happy to have this one. Now, these next three are really interesting because these were the only 3 games in the entire market, I think, looking through all of the SNES games in the entire market. These were the only 3 games that I'd never heard of. So these 3, let me know down in the comments if you've already heard of them before. So we have one called The Troddlers, which for some reason I couldn't get to play because every time I tried to start the level, it instantly thought that I wanted to restart the level and it took me to a game over screen. So I don't know what I'm doing there. I don't know whether it's my controller that's messing up or whether the game's broken or whether the Super NT doesn't work properly with this game. I really don't know, but it seems interesting from what I could see anyway. The next one is called Operation Starfish, and again this one wouldn't load up, so I don't know what's wrong with it, whether my Super NT's buggy or whether the contacts need cleaning. So I think it's a James Pond game. It's called Operation Starfish. I've played some of the other games in the series, but I'd never played this one, and the fact that it doesn't actually say James Pond on the label means that when I actually first bought this, I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know it was part of that series. And the final one here, and this one did play, and I managed to play it for about 10 minutes before I kind of got a little bored of it, but it's still a really interesting game, and it's always good to play a game that I've never heard of and just pick it up based on the cover alone. It is called Super Morph, and it was made by Sony for the SNES, and you basically play as a ball, and you can sort of change how you interact with the environment. You can turn yourself into a block of ice, or you can turn yourself into a cloud and float past things, and there's certain things within the levels that cause you to transform into one of these different forms. It seems really interesting, but the way the game plays is a little bit slow and clunky. So let me know in the comments if you've ever played this one before. Now, surprisingly, at this expo I only picked up one game for the original Game Boy, which I think is a new record for me. I usually pick up about 10 from these sort of events, but there was only one that I found that I didn't have, or more like I thought I had, and then when I went to look for it a few weeks ago, turns out I don't actually have it. So this is the original Batman for the Game Boy. A really great, very basic though, but very good platformer for the system. It reminds me a lot of the original Super Mario Land. It's got very small sprites and quite short levels, and the ending for each stage kind of looks like the end of a Mario Land level. So really happy to have this one. But like I said, it's one that I thought I already had, but I didn't. And of course, if you look over there, one of the things that I still have in this room is my Game Boy collection, so I'm really happy to have that. And I am planning on playing a lot more Game Boy stuff soon as well, so this will be one of the games that I play then. Now, unlike the Game Boy, a handheld system that I don't have a lot of games for, but I want to try and get into it a bit more, this is the Game Gear. So I picked up 6 games for the Game Gear. I don't have a way of actually showing you any footage from them, so I'm just going to briefly go through them now, and you can let me know down below if you know about these games or if you've ever played them before. So We have Chuck Rock. I remember I played the SNES version of this and I quite enjoyed it, so it will be interesting to see how that compares. Of course, Fantasy Zone is a Sega classic. Really happy to have this version on the Game Gear. Love the arcade game, and I'm very curious to see how that one compares. I got Shinobi 2. I do have the original Shinobi on the Game Gear, but I don't have this sequel, so it'll be interesting to see how this compares to the first one and how they managed to change it up for the sequel. So Shinobi 2. This one I'd never heard of before, but the cover looked interesting. This is called Popils or Populis, something like that, made by Tengen, of course famous for the NES version of Tetris. So let me know down in the comments what this game is all about. Let it just focus there, Poplis I think it's called. So yeah, let me know if you know anything about that. And these next two, this one is a Sega classic. I'll show you this one first. Of course, this is Echo the Dolphin. There you go, so this is Echo the Dolphin. Really curious again to see how the Game Gear version compares to the Mega Drive. And the last one here, I've got no idea what this game is, but some people on Twitter were excited that I've picked this one up. This one is called Woody Pop. So again, let me know what that is down in the comments, and hopefully I'll get myself a Game Gear again. I do have one, but it's broken at the minute, so hopefully I'll be able to get one. I would love to get one with one of those nice McWill LCD screens. And we have 3 games left here for 3 different systems. I'll start with the PSP game here that I've got on the top. I thought I already had all of the Project Diva games, but there's something that's slightly different about this one compared to the version that I've got, and that is the fact that next to where it says Project Diva Second, it actually says, there you go, now it's focused, you can actually see that it's got a hash symbol next to it instead, and the one I don't doesn't have that, so I'm not sure what the difference is. And from what I could tell, the cover and the UMD are the same, so it did have a different picture on the back though, so I'm not sure what's different, so let me know down in the comments what's different about this version. And this one here is Ultima 4 for the Master System. Now, this is a game that one of my friends used to have when he was growing up, and we were actually talking about Master System games recently, and I said if I ever find it, I'll get it and do some gameplay and stuff so he can see if he actually remembers it. Unfortunately, because I'm moving house at the minute, if you didn't already know, I don't have any way of playing Master System games here right now, but when I move into the new game room, I will give this a go. And I was really interested to see what came in this box as well, because he said it also included a map. So you've got the game there, of course you've got the instruction manual, but you've also got this fold-out poster here as well. On one side we have a map of the Ultima Island, there you go, hopefully you can see that. And then on the other side we have all different stats for all of the characters that you can find in the game, and all of the different recipes that you can make in the game as well. So not sure what the recipes actually entail, as I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a go. I don't really have that many RPGs for the Master System either, and I haven't really played that many, so really glad to get this. And the next RPG that I want to get for the Master System is the original Phantasy Star, so maybe at the next one of these events I can find that one. And the final game here, and I was very excited to pick this one up. I'm a huge fan of Gust's Atelier series, and this was one of the first ones that came out in the UK. This is Atelier Iris for the PS2, so there was 3 different Atelier Iris games on the PS2, and I've actually got the other 2, but I didn't own the first one, so really glad to finally get Atelier Iris 1. I don't have my PS2 here like a lot of other systems, so unfortunately there's no gameplay, but the other reason that I wanted to get this one in particular as well is because some of the people who left the company Quintet actually went to work on this and helped out with some of the graphics and some of the music, I believe. So when I'm going to get round to doing my big Quintet video in the future, this is one of the games that I wanted to talk about for that as well. But there is one other thing that I want to show you from my time in London this weekend, so I'll show you that now and then come back here to wrap this video up. So I finally made it to London. I'm just going to go and grab a bite to eat, and then I'm going to be on the way to the first game shop, which is called Play Nation Games in Croydon, so fingers crossed I managed to get there in time. Right, so I decided that I didn't want to get back on another train for another 3 hours or so, so instead I found somewhere a little bit closer that I think I can actually walk to, which is over here somewhere, called N1 Games, so let's go and see what that's like. So it took me about half an hour to walk here from Euston train station, and when I got inside I was actually quite surprised at how big it was considering it's in central London. A lot of the game shops that I've seen within London Centre itself are usually very small, so to see one with quite a few different glass cabinets full of games, as well as a shelf in the middle, some modern stuff, some retro stuff, it was just an all-round great shop. I didn't actually pick anything up, and the other thing that I have to say about this store as well is the fact that the owner seemed really nice. He was enjoying a good conversation with me about retro games, and I showed him my Instagram account and showed him my game collection, and he was really enjoying talking to me about that. I kind of feel bad for not picking anything up, but I went here the day before the market, and I kind of wanted to make sure I had enough money to actually spend at the show itself. But maybe if I go back to London in the future I might pick something up. You can see on the other side here there was a load of PSP games and even some PS1 games as well. So that first shop was pretty good. Now I'm on my way to shop number 2, which is called Games and Gadgets. But apparently it's just up here. There it is, Games and Gadgets. Let's go have a look. So this shop took me a lot longer to get to than I thought it would. I actually had blisters by the time I got there, and unfortunately I have to say it was not worth the trek. As you can see, this shelf here and those glass cabinets at the back, that's the entire store. It was literally just a few steps and then you're at the back of the store. And unfortunately, once again, I didn't pick anything up from here either, but it was still interesting to see what's around in London. Like one of my friends said, the rent in London is crazy, so don't expect to have that many great shops unless you want to get a train to the outskirts, and then there's a few other ones which are worth visiting, which hopefully I'll be able to go to next time. So I hope you enjoyed having a look at those 2 game shops. Even if they weren't really the best shops out there, it was still really cool to see some in London itself. Let me know down in the comments if you were at the London market as well, and let me know what you got from there. That's it for now though. I will see you all next week for the next episode. Goodbye.